Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. I am so excited today. As you may not, if this is your first day watching the show, you may not know. I'm a right-wing warmonger who just wants to gobble up all the oil in the Middle East. That's all I want to do, is just take people's resources. And we've gone a whole 3 months since we started a new war. And I was totally jonesing, man. I was looking for a vein. I need some more kinetic military action, man. I need it. And then today I got up and I read this headline. The Obama administration is intensifying the American covert war in Yemen. Did you know we were in Yemen? Oh, that's right, it's covert. Exploiting a growing power vacuum in the country to strike at militant suspects with armed drones and fighter jets. Well, that's fantastic. That's war number 4, hate mongers. War number, count 'em, 4. And it's a covert war, too. I like the secret wars. Congress, did you guys know about that one? No? Who's feeling a little out of the loop today? You are, yeah. No wonder Anthony Weiner had all that time to chat online and take pictures of himself. Oh, Congress is completely irrelevant, aren't they? The other thing I've been waiting for, haven't seen it yet, I thought war number 4 might push people over the edge today, but where are all the anti-war protesters? You remember those guys? I think we need to put an Amber Alert out for them, because they might have been kidnapped, they might be in danger. Because surely those lefties would be out there holding protests against yet another war.
Impeach now! Impeach now!
Wake up, America! Bring the troops home! Wake up, America! Bring the troops home!
Not by $1! Not one more!
Wow.
Don't you dare!
I could work my whole life and not be that big of a loser, but God bless them. The Code Pinks, the international answers. Where are you? I mean, besides in Spooky Dude's pocket, where are you? I'm concerned. I hope you're okay. Also, does anybody really know what side we're supposed to be on in Yemen? I mean, are we with the government or are we against the government? I'm not really even sure. Can I ask you this question? Has there ever been any kind of military action in America where you're not really sure? I don't think I've ever seen a war, ever, where you're like, I don't know, are we for the Germans or against the Germans? Why the silence? Here's why. Do you remember the Weather Underground, the manifesto? We showed you this about a year ago. We showed you this manifesto, and I said to you, whoa, if you read this thing, it's exactly what this country's doing now from the administration. Let me just read this again. 1969. The strategy which flows from this is what Che called creating 2, 3, many Vietnams. Che was so clever when he was naming things. To mobilize the struggle so sharply in so many places that the imperialists cannot possibly deal with it all, since it is essential to their interest. They will try to deal with it all, and it will be defeated and destroyed in the process. I just want to point out, creating many Vietnams and entangling us in wars, key point, to defeat and destroy the imperialists. That's us. Now, what did the president say just last week when he was speaking in front of Chrysler? Listen carefully.
There's still some headwinds that are coming at us. Lately,
Headwinds.
it's been high gas prices.
Speed bumps.
That have caused a lot of hardship for a lot of working families. And then you have the economic disruptions following the tragedy in Japan. You got the instability in the Middle East, which makes folks uncertain.
Yeah. You got that last one? Okay. Gas, he controls. Oil, he's got that one. We're not really looking for anything. The other headwind, Japan, that's God's territory. And then, or at least now, until Cass Sunstein starts to regulate God. And then there was the last one, the instability in the Middle East. He says it causes uncertainty. Is that true? Absolutely. So it's hurting the economy. You got that? Instability in the Middle East hurts the economy. Let's now look at the president, how he's handled the uncertainty. Here he is.
The people of Egypt are calling for change.
Uh-huh.
They've turned out in extraordinary numbers representing all ages and all walks of life. But it's young people who've been at the forefront.
People just like you. Do you remember
A new
that?
generation.
New generation. just like you.
Your generation.
Your generation. There he is.
Who want their voices to be heard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's get the marching band out and encourage youth all over the world to stand up. If you remember right, he even compared the guy who set himself on fire in Tunisia to Rosa Parks. So that headwind might be coming from all of the hot air that he's blowing or all the stuff that he's sucking. He's engaging Libya in a war that he promises is going to last days, definitely not weeks. And here we are, 81 days later. How many days in a week? 85? Not sure. 81 days later, 20 days since the War Powers Act has expired. He promised no boots on the ground, and there are several reports that, yes, Americans have boots on the ground. Now, I don't know if we just dropped boots, but I'm pretty sure there might be feet and legs and people in those boots. But I'm not sure. The only reports we're getting are from that White House tried and true source, the jewel of journalism, Al Jazeera. And now the president has started another covert war going on in Yemen. Sounds like some of the headwinds of destabilization are coming from this White House. He's acknowledged uncertainty is hurting our economy. So why is he continuing to make choices that lead to more uncertainty? America, I think we're headed for real trouble because the excuses are not working on the American people anymore. He's starting to do that whole, no, these aren't the droids you're looking for. And nobody's buying it. The fundamental transformation of America, changing America into something other than it always has been, is the goal, always has been the goal of this administration. There are enemies inside and outside the gates of our country. Tonight, I hope to arm you with information so you can be part of the solution and not part of the problem, and certainly not part of the brain-dead sheep that will say, when did all this happen? The number one question asked of me is, now what? Now what? Tonight, I'm going to introduce you to a guy who I think is spookier than I am. Yeah, only because he knows exactly why he's right. Coming up. Oh, hello, America. According to a new Rasmussen poll, only 24% say they have similar views as President Obama. 24%. Even among Democrats, only 45% say they have similar views to President Obama. Only 13% say Obama was more conservative than them. Wow. Did they bring Che back to life? There's another poll. 48% in a CNN poll believe we are headed for a Great Depression within the next 12 months. Remember, Obama just said he's not even worried about a double-dip recession. Only 24% share that view, and that number has plummeted 15% in just the last few weeks. So here's my question. How long will the advice to prepare be ridiculed and mocked? I lived in Florida for a while. I lived through a couple of mild hurricanes. I lived in Tampa. When a storm is coming, you board up the windows. Even if you suspect the storm's not going to, hit you directly, if it's coming in your direction, you board the windows up. You prepare just in case. I can't imagine anybody in Joplin that had a storm cellar that said, you know what, I'm going to sit out here on the roof and just watch the pretty sky. You go into the storm cellar. Do we not learn anything from our grandparents? They used to can food this time every year. Have you gone to BJ's and bought some extra groceries yet? I have this crazy belief that this audience will be the difference between success and failure ultimately in America. This audience, with my radio audience, internet and television, the footprint is about, they tell me, 30 million people a month. That's a lot of people. Now, what you do, the choices you make as individuals and then as a collective, what you read, what you learn, how you prepare, how you wake other people up, that's going to make a difference. And you have to realize that not everyone is going to wake up. They never do. But it is time to launch the lifeboats, gang. We have to get to a safe harbor and come back for the rest as the water starts to creep up around their ankles. We are at this program at the last 14 days of broadcast here at Fox. It has been an amazing ride. And people have asked me, okay, what are you going to do next? Why are you leaving Fox? Why are you going to... Because I believe, first of all, we've captured lightning in a bottle here. But it is time now for me to change what I do and be much more specific and roll up my sleeves. Specific on the things that we can do together to save our country. Over the remaining broadcast time that we have here at Fox, we are going to go over some of those things. And you can go to glennbeck.com for any more additional information on how to be a part of a solution. We are Americans, and we need to be those people of Wilmington and Joplin. When, and God forbid, if tragedy comes, tough times will come. But the people in Joplin and the people in Wilmington, they didn't just sit around and wait for the FEMA trucks to bring in some food. People came from near and wide to help. We did it together as Americans. Individuals did it, one by one. People who didn't even have a clue, they just said, I got to get into the car, I've got to go help. Some people loaded their car with groceries, some people were leaders, other people just were hands to help. We have to stop looking to the R's and the D's for our solution. Skip the middleman. It's not the way the system is structured in life anymore. Stop wasting time trying to call the switchboards at Congress. They're very busy doing whatever it is they now do behind closed doors. Maybe some of them are texting, I'm not sure. I hear one of them is a very good photographer. I wonder if maybe it's time to stop painting more signs, unless those signs say, help this way. You have to begin preparing for the storm, but not just for you or for your kids or grandkids, but for your neighbors and community. And if the storm doesn't come or if it bypasses us, oh well, we'll all be stronger for it. And if it does come, you will be a lifeboat for others, a shelter for others. America needs leaders, not sheep. We need people who are ready to get to work. Of that 48% who now believe a Great Depression is coming in the next 12 months, of that 48%, how many have boarded up their own windows? How many have done anything to prepare? And how many are just saying, yep, I think one's coming? There are a lot of people who say that they don't know how. That's one of the things we're going to try to address tonight. But you can begin by learning the lessons of our grandparents and our great-grandparents. You do the simple things. You don't have to bring 5 random families into your house and cook dinner for them every night. You think of Joplin. People came in and donated what they could. They helped in whatever possible way they could. A shirt, a meal, water, a teddy bear. You start with what you can control, and you can control yourself. Be better at your job than anyone else in your company. Be the man or woman who's the last one to be fired because they just can't afford to lose you. And trust me on this one, because I've learned this myself. Get over yourself. You're not as good as you think you are. If you own a small business, don't cut corners. Do the right thing for your customers. Do the right thing for your employees. Be on the up and up, not only in business, but all personal life as well. Learn from Anthony Weiner. Be honest in all of your dealings. Know history and know the Constitution. Understand what it is and what it created. The miracle of freedom really is just that, a miracle. I started reading this book over the weekend. The Miracle of Freedom, the 7 tipping points that saved the world. This thing is unbelievable. It's one of the best history books I have read. This should be on everyone's shelf. It only takes, it talks about in this, it only takes about 5% in all of human history. 5% of human history have ever lived under any kind of free conditions. Only 5% have ever experienced it. 95% have been slaves. We are letting this slip through our fingers because we've grown lazy, stupid, apathetic, or too trusting of people in power. Wake up. Know the Constitution. What if 48% of the people are right, and we do slip into a Great Depression? I think, honestly, it could be a Great Depression, because the longer you prop something up, the deeper the problem becomes. We showed you earlier this week all the economic and housing stats that are actually worse now than they were in the Great Depression. We probably would have hit a Great Depression at the TARP point. What does it look like today? But if they are right and the economy tanks or even worse, what happens then? What happens when grocery stores either have no food or it's so expensive that no one can afford it? What happens when unemployment and energy prices necessarily skyrocket, to quote the president? Have you ever seen a grocery store when you say a snowstorm is coming or a hurricane is coming? The shelves are wiped out. Shelves are empty. People can laugh at you or me all they want. I don't care anymore. How many days do people go without food or money before they begin acting erratically? James Carville said civil unrest, if the economy keeps tanking, is imminently possible. I agree with him. He is right, even though he called me a crazy man when I said the same thing over a year ago. When unrest hits home, as it will we be the people of Joplin and take care of ourselves without waiting on the government? Or will we turn on each other, and will we beg the government to do whatever they have to do to save us, take care of us, and inevitably control us? We have to be more free at the state and local level. We have to be more independent. And dare I say it, we have to be more religious, but religious in the way Ben Franklin talked about religion. In 1790, Yale University asked him, "What is the American religion?" And he said, "Here is my creed. I believe in one God, creator of the universe, that he governs it by his providence, that he ought to be worshiped, that the most acceptable service we can render to him is doing good to his other children." Gang, that is the American religion. That's it. It's not happenstance that we're the most charitable nation to ever walk the face of the earth. It's our American religion. We have to find that within ourselves and prepare to be that greatest American generation yet again. Tonight, I want you to meet a guy who is, I think, one of the smartest guys out there. You will meet him, and you will be, at first, you'll be like, "Oh no, please make him stop talking because he scares the crap out of me." And then you'll be glad you met him, because I think he's going to help you clarify in your mind what's coming, and possibly it'll give you some ideas on some things that you can do. You'll meet him when we come back. Who sees the world in similar fashion as I do. And in this case, it's good to be, if I'm crazy, it's good to be surrounded by a guy who's crazier than I am. Jim Rogers, he is a legendary investor and author of A Gift to My Children, A Father's Lessons for Life and Investing. Have you always, I mean, you're legendary to have a sit down with you and to be, I mean, unless you're Neil Cavuto, you don't get a chance to sit down with you very often. How long have you been deemed nuts?
Probably for about most of my life, I would suspect, looking back on it, even when I was in high school. I grew up in a very small town in Alabama. Even then, they thought there was something wrong with me.
Right.
And they were probably right.
Right, yeah. You give me a thumbnail sketch of what you see coming.
Well, the United States is now the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, Glenn. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better. You would think that those clowns in Washington would read one history book and see what happens when countries get into this kind of situation. Nobody ever has gotten out of this kind of situation without a crisis or a semi-crisis. Mm-hmm. Now the crisis or the semi-crisis is coming sooner rather than later. We're the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. In the history of the world.
Are they inflating our money intentionally as the only way to get out of this debt?
Of course, that's what they hope to do, is they will cause inflation. I mean, I don't know if they're smart enough to plan this out, but the way it's working, they're going to inflate the currency, cause inflation, currency will come worth less and less. and would pay it off in worthless money.
I talk to people all the time who are at your level, and they say, Glenn, no, you know, it's going to be a controlled inflation. I don't know how you control that. There's no way to control that.
Nobody has ever been able to control inflation. Once inflation starts, then you try to put it down. It gets harder and harder. The longer you wait, the worse it gets.
Right.
It's all, I mean, just read some history books. People think I'm nuts too. I say, just look it up.
I know.
I'm not smart. I just looked it up.
Right.
You look it up too.
It's really simple. I mean, one of the first things, when they started TARP, a friend of mine who is very well aware of all the situations just said this to me: read all you can about Weimar. And I have. And there came a point where the politicians were, well, where they are now, where they looked at each other and said, okay, if we stop all this stimulus, then we go into a Great Depression, and then the people are going to rise up, and there'll be riots in the streets. And if we don't, there'll be hyperinflation. And they said, yeah, but that's not necessarily guaranteed. That gives us more time. All they're doing is, and they could be of the best intent. I'm not claiming that they are, but they could have the best intent, and they're doing just, let's just have more time to figure something else out.
I don't think any politician has ever brought disaster on knowingly and willingly. It just gets out of control. But Glenn, most politicians are not that smart. That's why they become politicians. The studies show, you know, that the people in America who become the best politicians are the people who excelled at playground. They didn't excel at anything else. Most of them have never had jobs. They don't know how the world works, and it's frightening. It's frightening.
Okay, so tell me about the Middle East, because I think the Middle East is about to be. Would you agree with me that Israel is the keystone of the West? That if that falls in this situation, that just starts to sweep across Europe and destabilizes everything.
Well, if Israel falls, you're certainly going to have chaos in the Middle East. There's no question about that. I don't think you're going to see the Muslims at the gates of Vienna again.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the destabilization, that the whole world, you destabilize Israel, the whole thing, and the West is already on the ropes.
Well, there's no question that you're going to see a lot more social unrest in Europe. You're going to see more social unrest you're going to see more social unrest everywhere, including the United States, I'm afraid.
You believe there will be burning buildings in New York or Los Angeles? I mean, Watts riots kind of stuff?
Don't you?
Yes, I do.
I mean, what's wrong with you? Read your history.
I'm there. It's nice to be with somebody.
Well, I mean, just look it up. This is not complicated stuff. As you may remember in the 30s, you know, remember Cox's Army? They marched on Washington. You had people marching on Washington in the 30s and camping out around the White House because they were really angry and very upset. Now, in the 30s, America was much more disciplined. It's very unlikely, but in this decade, America's not nearly as disciplined as we were in those days. Now everybody expects a free lunch. In the 30s, nobody expected a free lunch. They were willing to work. They were willing to do whatever they could to get money and food. We don't have that nation anymore.
So let me just go tick off a couple of other things here first. Is gas going up because we're printing money, or because OPEC won't produce more?
No, gas is going up in the first place because we're running out of known reserves of oil. The IEA, the International Energy Agencies, are going around the world pleading with people to listen. Known reserves of oil are in decline. And then you have the central bank in the U.S. throwing gasoline onto the fire. So we have shortages that are coming, but then you have Mr. Bernanke down there printing money as fast as he can, and that, of course, leads to inflation. It always has. This is not brain surgery. Just look it up.
How did the Gulf and the BP thing affect the United States and our future on fuel?
Well, it was certainly a disaster what happened. I mean, I'm from Alabama, and I certainly know a lot of people who suffered on the Gulf Coast when all that happened. But the unknown consequence, or the unintended consequence, is now we're not drilling. We're not drilling for oil in a nation which is running out of oil, at least known oil, and we're not drilling.
Have you seen what the regulations are doing now to coal, what they're talking about now, that it's going to make the...
No, everything is going to be much more expensive. They don't seem to understand we're running out of known sources of energy. And unless we do something quickly, very quickly, prices of gasoline and oil are going to go through the roof.
Like what?
Like drill. Like drill. The main thing we need to do is to drill for oil. We've got a lot of oil in the United States, apparently, but nobody can drill for it.
Okay. Well, when we come back, I want to talk a little about some of the things that Jim just said is coming. Now I want to kind of take him to, okay, so what do you do if you're somebody with just a 401k, or you're not a billionaire that can move your money offshore, et cetera, et cetera. And I've asked Jim before we went on the air to come up with a few things, recommendations to parents or to grandparents, to college students. What should you be doing? And also I want to ask him a little bit about what he said. I read that you said that you believe the dollar is over, and it could happen in the next 5 months. Yeah. He's a spooky dude.
I said it could happen in the next 5 months. I didn't say it was going to happen in the next 5 months.
It could happen in the next 5 months. And then I want to talk to him a little bit about food and farmers, and some stats and some ideas on farming that I've never heard anyplace else. Coming up. Back with legendary investor Jim Rogers. Jim, when you wrote this book, A Gift to My Children, A Father's Lessons for Life and Investing, when you first thought about this, was it as urgent in your mind? It probably was.
Well, actually, that book started, I was very against children. I never wanted to have children. I thought children were a terrible waste of time, money, energy. I felt sorry for people who had children. My friends who had children, I said, you poor saps. I was so wrong. Totally 100% wrong about children. Children are so wonderful and so much fun. So this little girl came along and just blew me away. So I had another one too, because I thought it was so much fun. In fact, if there's anybody here who hasn't had children, go home and get on with it. I promise you, because take a day off if you have to. Or, well, no, don't take a day off these days. Yeah. Go home for lunch.
Anthony Weiner
go home for lunch.
Let's move off of that.
But yeah, let's leave that alone.
Yeah, let's leave that alone.
But so I started writing down things that I thought I would want to tell her when she got older. And then a reporter called me and started asking me, what do you teach your children? And she wrote an article, and one thing led to another, and here we have a book. Because the things that you write on in this are, I mean, it's what's amazing is it's common sense. It used to be. It's the things that my grandparents and my parents used to say. Above all, be ethical. Save. Focus on what you like. This is where I kind of want to take it here for a second on. I'm a big believer in education, but George Washington was self-educated. You don't have to go through to an Ivy League school and spend $300,000, because you're not going to get the return on that investment most cases. Sometimes you will. Most cases you won't. And people don't understand that they start out looking for the money. Money, do you agree with me? Money is a byproduct. You focus on what you love to do and create, and the money comes secondary. The money will follow, yes. If you do your job and do it better than anybody else, the money's going to follow you. I tell my little girl, she's only 8, but I say, look, if you want to be a gardener, Daddy's going to bite his tongue and say, okay, become a gardener. Because the people who do what they want never go to work. They wake up every day and start having fun. They can hardly wait. And someday she will be the gardener at Buckingham Palace, and someday she'll have a chain of garden shops all across America, and she'll be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Everybody will say, we always knew you'd be a good gardener. Right. But she doesn't necessarily even have to have that, and she's complete inside. Oh yeah, no, that's what I mean. Even if she's not on the New York Stock Exchange, right, she's going to be happy. Right. Very happy. Right. The go back to the advice of school, because I know you went to an Ivy League. Don't bring it up. Yes. Nobody is talking. We all talk about how much health insurance has gone up, but nobody has really, at least in Washington, talked about faster than health insurance,
education has gone up, and it's a bunch of gobbledygook, and nobody's teaching history, nobody's teaching critical thinking at all. You are indoctrinated there. Can you get away with not having a formal education, or being, because I'm a self-taught man, self-taught, or just not going to that college everybody says?
One doesn't have to go to Princeton in order to be successful. In fact, I went to an Ivy League school, as you said. Many of the people I went to school with, that was sort of the peak for them. They went to the Ivy League school, and life went into decline after that. No, you don't have to go to an Ivy League school. You don't even have to go to college. In college, if you come out of college these days, if you come out of Princeton these days, you will be in debt by $300,000.
That's crazy.
Or somebody will be. Or your parents will write the check. But somebody will be out $300,000. Is it worth it? I can't see how it could be worth it. It's a nice thing. It'll help you get your first job, or maybe even your second job. But after that, it's up to you.
I mean, I think it's just up to you on the very beginning. I guess you could walk in through somebody's door with a diploma. I said to my daughter, she was working, and she was working really hard, and she wanted to get A's, and this is her first year in college, and I said, honey, relax. Nobody's going to say to you, the minute you walk out this door, nobody's going to say to you, well, what was your GPA? Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Maybe the first job, but that's all.
Okay.
Maybe the first job.
The question that people ask me is, what do we do? How would we prepare? If I don't have $1 million or $1 billion, I have a 401k, and we're just eking out a living, as most people are. How would they prepare?
If you've got a 401, if you're going to invest in anything, only invest in what you yourself know a lot about. Don't listen to people you see on television. Don't listen to people you read in the magazines and the newspapers. You invest in only what you yourself know a lot about. Otherwise, just put the money in the bank and earn very little interest these days, but at least you're going to be earning interest, and you're not going to be losing money. Most professional investors do not even do as well as the Dow Jones Industrial Average. They just don't do as well as the averages. So do what you know. If you don't know anything, put your money in the bank and do nothing. And wait. Wait until you find something that you know will be a winner.
You said at some point, and I want to pick it up here, at some point you said that you think the dollar, the cash currency, will be worthless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't you?
Yeah, yes, I do. But I don't have the answer that maybe you would have. So if not cash, then what? Back in a second. Back with Jim Rogers. He has a book out called A Gift to My Children, A Father's Lessons for Life and Investing. And when you listen to what he says about what he believes is coming in the world, and especially America, it's hard to put together what he writes to his children. Don't panic.
Well, don't panic. Keep your head clear, because when everybody else is panicking, you've got to be able to take decisive action and the correct action. Very few people do the right thing when they're panicking.
So what is the correct action when somebody says the dollar is going to be worthless, currency will be worthless?
Well, first of all, people need to do their homework. Don't just sit here and listen to me on TV,
right.
I promise you. You've got to understand yourself what's going on. But the way historically you've protected yourself is you own real assets, whether that's silver or rice or, real things, natural gas. The things that go up in price when currencies go down are real things. And if you understand them and you can invest in those things and you know enough about them to invest in them, that's how you protect yourself, and you might make money. And you learn about investing abroad.
What do you mean?
Well, you learn about having some of your assets invested in other countries. Everybody should have some money invested in...
What do you invest in? What do you invest in China? Because you live over in China.
I live in Asia. I don't live in China. I live in Singapore.
Okay.
I own some shares in the Chinese stock market. I own the Chinese currency as well. I have investments in many countries.
Is that the currency of the future, or is there going to be one world currency?
I can't imagine there's going to be one world currency unless somehow or another we go back to the gold standard. If we suddenly had a huge disaster tomorrow, people might reach for gold because there's nothing else they could reach for. But that would be the only kind of world currency I could see.
You say that, because we have an audience full of college-age interns today, and you were saying in the break that everybody here should be learning a foreign language, at least one.
Well, the next 50 years is not going to be like the last 50 years for Americans, whether we like it or not. You know, we're not going to control the world in the next 50 years. We're going to try, but we're not going to be able to do it. So everybody should understand a foreign language and be fluent in it, because we're going to have a lot of dealings with the rest of the world, and that will give you a leg up. My daughters speak Chinese. Now, that's not going to make them successful, but at least if they're working in a Chinese restaurant, at least they're going to be the maitre d', they're not going to be the dishwasher.
The Mandarin Chinese?
That's what my daughters speak, yes.
Spanish?
Spanish, Mandarin, Portuguese maybe, if you really want to
and
be.
English?
And English, of course,
yeah.
yes. My daughters speak English and Chinese.
Okay. All right, when we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about what you said about farms and some of the stats on what you currently see now in farming and what you think is possibly coming our way. We'll do that next. Back with Jim Rogers. Tell me the state of farming around the world.
Well, the world's facing a serious agricultural nightmare coming up. We have inventories of food are the lowest in recorded history. We have no farmers. We have shortages. The average age of farmers in America is 58 years old. In parts of Japan, they have no farmers. They have fields that nobody can farm because there's nobody there. They're bringing in Chinese to try to farm those fields, and they really don't like Chinese, as you know, and yet they're desperate. The world's going to be facing serious problems in the next decade. Those guys who are 58 will be 68 in 10 years if they're still alive. We have nobody going to study agriculture.
Why is that?
Agriculture's been a horrible business, Glenn, for the past 30 years. Nobody's been able to make much money. I suspect all these kids here in your audience, I bet none of them knows anybody who's majoring in agriculture. We produce more physical education graduates every year than we produce agricultural graduates. And now we're going to have to pay the price. You can't make any money in farming, and that's why nobody goes into it, and that's why there's no capital. Prices are going to go higher. That I hope will attract.
How long before that happens? How long does, if you're sitting here watching and you're like, okay, I've watched the Glenn Beck program for a while, and he's been trying to scare all the old people to death for the last 2 years, and he does it just because I guess he hates the president or whatever their excuse is. But now I hear you. How long do I have to be able to put some food away before you start to see a real steep?
Go to the shop, go to the grocery store, and see how high prices have gone in the last 2 years. While you say you've been trying to scare people, they can tell you that prices are very high. You probably don't go to the grocery store. Your butler goes to the grocery store.
No, I go to the grocery store. I get my own ice cream, my friend.
All right,
and in New York, $8 a half gallon.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Milk, bread, anything. Prices are going up, and it's going to get a lot worse. But it has to, Glenn, because if prices don't go higher, we're not going to have any farmers, and we're not going to have any food at any price, because prices have to be high enough for farmers to make a living, and then they will be rich, and then young people will say, I'm not going to go to Wall Street, I'm going to become a farmer. Farming is going to be a much better profession the next 20 years than Wall Street.
Are you concerned about the floods that we've had, the E. coli over in Europe? Does this compound the problem, or is this?
Of course it does. Whenever you have something which cuts the supply, we already have low supplies. We have very low inventories right now, historically. And anything that cuts supply makes it worse. Prices are going to go much, much higher. Protect yourself. I plead with you, protect yourself, because it's going to get worse.
I said to Jim, I said, somebody told me to buy water, and he said, no, don't own water, because then you'll be like the oil company is now. How dare you be somebody who's trying to keep this water?
They will call you an evil speculator, and they will hang you in the street. But if you can figure out a way to provide water, to purify water, or transport water, or discover water, they'll build a monument to you in the public square. No, you don't want to be an evil speculator. Then they'll come after you.
Back in a minute. Tomorrow, Greta Van Susteren will be doing a special on sex in Capitol Hill and all the scandals and all that stuff. We will be back here Monday from New York. Good night, America.